Welcome to the Athlete CEO podcast. Each week, we aim to bring you world-class interviews with the brightest, most successful entrepreneurs, innovators, athletes, and business minds today to share insights on how to leverage your wealth for maximum impact in all areas of your life. You won't be hearing any vague theories or strategies from us. Our guests have walked the walk and are committed to sharing the best of what they know so you can apply the lessons that they have learned, sometimes the hard way. Whether you're an athlete, entrepreneur, or just curious what drives the success of these guests, this podcast is for you. Now, let's get to the show.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Athlete CEO podcast. I'm your host, Eric Averill, and I am joined by my co-host, older brother and business partner, the co-founder of AWM, Brandon Averill. And we are absolutely fired up for today's episode. It is really a unique privilege to interview somebody who embodies what the Athlete CEO podcast is all about. So our guest today is a world-class athlete, has a background of actually operating his own business, so really a true entrepreneur in the sense of the word, and is now one of the general partners at the largest VC firm in Los Angeles, Upfront Ventures. And so in this episode, Brandon and I get to dig into not only what makes our guest an incredible investor, but really to glean tips from what was his path as a collegiate athlete that's led him into the venture capital space. And then also diving into the way he views health, he views family, and how to ultimately balance those priorities and how to really have a larger definition of success. And so with that great introduction, we would love to welcome you into our conversation with Kobie Fuller, general partner at Upfront Ventures. Well, Kobie, welcome to the Athlete CEO podcast. Thank you for taking a few minutes this afternoon.
Thanks for having me. Excited to have the conversation.
Yeah, it's really exciting for Brandon and I. We had an opportunity to spend a few minutes with you and a group of current/former professional athletes as part of an educational event at CES this earlier in January of this year. And it's fun for us to be able to follow up on so much conversation. And really where we want to start is very, very common. A lot of people want to start with, hey, take us back to the beginning. And we're definitely going to jump into some of your iconic wins from an investment standpoint with Exact Target and Oculus. But where I would love to start is learning a little bit more about your history and your narrative of what it was like to grow up in Milton, Mass, and understanding a lot of those dynamics, because we're big believers that so much of who we are as kids and our families shape the way that we look at the world today. So I'd love for you just to share with our listeners a little bit about what it was like growing up, the emphasis on sports or computers, and just love to hear a little bit about that.
Totally. So I'm an East Coast guy, like you said, grew up in Milton, Massachusetts, and athletics was a huge part of my upbringing. Originally, story goes actually that I was super passionate about basketball, always was on the court, nights, weekends, playing. Thought I was pretty damn good until I get to freshman high school tryouts, and I thought I had it in the bag. Coach said to make the team, you need 2 out of 3 traits. First one being heart, second one being skill, the third one being speed. Go through the full week, brings in each athlete one by one into his office. He sits me down. He goes, okay, Kobie, I think I told you that you need 2 out of 3 of these traits to make the team. Heart, you got a ton of heart, and speed, you are clearly the fastest guy on the court, but you got no damn skill. So I don't think you belong getting on this track team. This basketball team is gonna happen. Stop, heartbroken. I'm like, damn, I haven't spent like most of my life just putting in the work, and it's not gonna happen. But it probably wasn't one of the best things that happened, because then I was like, wait a minute, heart and speed, that's a pretty good recipe for track and field. So I went on and started trying my luck at running around the oval, and started off my career as a sprinter. So I was a 400, 200 guy. So in high school, the moronic coaches push you in every event if you have any bit of athleticism to beat up the other towns and dual meets. So I'd have meets I was doing the mile, followed by the triple jump, long jump, 4x1, 4x4, then throwing some hurdles, which is just not healthy. But that was so much of my upbringing, is being able to be competitive around the oval. And then also I was a nerd. I was a total nerd, loved gaming, and really got into technology and computers through gaming. My dad worked for Compaq, actually Digital Equipment, if anyone remembers that company, that was acquired by Compaq, was acquired by HP. And I remember very early on, he brought home this computer and I didn't know what to do with it, but I was like, let me see if I can play some games on it. And then played some games, and more as I tried to play the better games, the computer wouldn't really stand up to run those games. So I asked my dad, like, hey, bring it home into the computer. He was like, hey, bugger off. Why don't you just figure out how to get, have fun with the computer I gave you, ungrateful little kid. So then I figured out how to go in and find ways to optimize the OS, and found also ways to take my allowance money and buy upgrades to the motherboard and graphics card. And then my dad saw that passion and was able to then allow me to pursue it even more by giving me a little bit of money to build my own computers and the like. And then that also resulted in me into doing IT support and get a job working in my local town hall, helping sort of troubleshoot any sort of technical issues amongst all the offices there. And that was kind of my upbringing. It was a combination of just athletics and computers, which it really is kind of still what I do today. Is I invest in technology, and I'm a meathead lifting in the gym. So that's kind of how I grew up, is just is playing video games, repairing computers, and beating kids on the track.
Wow. And it's impressive, right? One of the things, and we'll get into this later in the podcast, is talking, I think, through mine and Brandon's own professional careers as athletes, and even conversations we have today, is there's almost this mythical belief of like, I only have time to be one type of person. And here you are. I think I listened in a previous video, this IT support you were doing. I mean, this is like during junior high and high school, correct? That you're doing this? Yeah. So here you are, you become obviously a track star, and you're doing IT work at the same point. So a lot of us, I don't think that's what we had going on in high school, but tell me a little bit, you end up at Harvard. Is that driven more off of your athletic background or love for like the academic side, or like why Harvard? Obviously we can sit here and say it's Harvard from an Ivy League standpoint, but was that decision a combination of the both? What made you end up there?
Yeah, full transparency on that. For a while, if anyone's from Boston, they know that Harvard's the stop on the red line T. To me, it was always the stop on the red line somewhere in Cambridge. I didn't know for a while. I was like, oh wow, this is a pretty prestigious institution. So one day, I think it was probably junior, senior year, started getting all these letters to my homeroom in high school from all these recruiters trying to kind of get me to look at their schools. And then one day I started getting all these Ivy League letters, and I started seeing people's reactions to like Harvard and like Princeton, Yale. And I'm like, oh, wait a minute. People are reacting a lot differently than some of these other schools. So then I decided, why not take some of these tours and apply? And, I got in. And I, luckily enough, I had the grade to be able to go to such a great school like Harvard. And that's kind of honestly how the decision was made. It was honestly a lot of just blessed inbound from a lot of different sort of amazing schools of all kinds. And also it was one where I wanted to stay local. Family matters a lot to me. And so being closer to my family is something that I really prioritized at an early age. And it was the perfect fit on so many different levels, from being able to still pursue sport at a D1 institution, as well as have the blessing of a really good, top of the line liberal arts education.
That's super helpful. One thing I'd love for you to dig in maybe even a little further on that experience is, once you're at Harvard, obviously it's a top academic institution, and you're competing on the track, and not only competing, but you're winning at the highest level. And kind of Eric had alluded to this a little bit, but this time fallacy of, or the time excuse, right? How do you balance both? And as far as on the track, in the classroom, and then maybe even extrapolate a little bit into your transition, as you went on. I read somewhere that, as you went into the working world, you were actually still running with Nike. You were still trying to compete at a very high level. I'd love to hear maybe, your experience, how you handled that, but also advice for other people when they have that kind of, I don't have enough time excuse sitting out there.
Yeah, totally. So I'd say actually it's a principle that I didn't realize I lived by at such an early point in my life that now has come front and center is this whole concept of honestly, it takes what it takes. So one of my now good friends, the guy by the name of Trevor Moad, who is basically a mental performance coach, works with a bunch of elite athletes, the likes of Russell Wilson, Coach Saban, and a bunch of other household names. And Trevor really preaches, amongst many things, just if there's something in your life that you want, whether you're trying to win a Super Bowl, you're trying to get that promotion, you're trying to create the next unicorn company, it just takes what it takes. And that may mean that you have to put in way more time in the weight room or on the track or in the field or reading a lot more books than you want to actually reach a level of success. And for me, early on, I just realized that's just the way I had to live my life. And part of it was through some tough experiences where I still remember freshman year, if I really want to go to Harvard, you can't be failing tests. I still remember my first statistics midterm. I thought, yeah, this is pretty easy. Statistics, it's like rolling dice. There's the probability that you get some number and I'll figure it out. And I still remember to this day, it's so vivid in my head. I get the blue book back with the numbers 37 on it. And I'm like, okay, I know it's out of 100, but things are graded at a curve here at Harvard. So everyone probably really failed. And that's probably like a B. But then this is probably a class amount, 250. I look up at the screen and there's this histogram. I remember that statistic. Histogram, all of the distribution and scores across the actual class. And I look up and I see there's a cluster around mid 90s, I guess those overachieving kids that really studied for the test. And then there's some around kind of 70 or so. And then there was this long tail and then this random outlier at 37. And my buddy, he was trying to have me not look up and see it. And I look up, I'm like, damn, I got by far the lowest grade in the class. And I realized, hey, if I'm trying to go to this school, if I'm trying to actually make it through, I got to study. And the professor doesn't care if I'm also trying to put work in on the track and be one of the top sprinters in the Ivy League, and vice versa. I still remember the sophomore year, we get our butts whooped at the Ivy League championships, come in last by such a long stretch. I think we maybe got, as a team, got 17 points. That's horrible. If you win first in any given event, you get 10 points. And there's a lot of events where you should get more than 17 points. So then I realized that, if I'm going to continue and come back junior year, I can, one, come back, be mediocre and get my ass kicked again. Two, just quit. Or three, really put in the work. And you know what? There's a choice in life. You can have a choice of actually staying in and trying to achieve great success, or you can quit. That year, a lot of people actually quit. A lot of my teammates are just like, you know what? This is not worth it. I'd rather do something else with my time. And for me, it's you know what? I want to be an Ivy League champ, and I want to actually try to help turn this team around. And that year we had still, not the greatest year. It was a lot better. And that really was a jumping off point for me to actually achieve some of the fastest times I've ever run in my life, my senior year, where I realized I want to actually be the best I can as an Ivy League sprinter. I'm just going to have to put the time in on the track while still not getting the lowest grade on my statistics exam. And I think that's generally what life's all about. You always have all these conflicting forces and pulls on how you spend your time. And a lot of it's being able to compartmentalize, knowing what it takes to actually achieve success that you're trying to achieve, and then just putting in the work. And then realizing that if you don't want to actually achieve the success, if you're trying to create an illusion that you can achieve X by putting in Y, but you need to put in Z, then you might as well save yourself the time and just quit. So for me, it's all about just putting in what it takes to actually achieve results you want, and not lying to yourself about what it takes to do it.
I think thanks for sharing that. I think that's a fantastic lesson. And I think at the heart of it, right, is determining what you really want, and, then figuring out what it takes and whether it's worth it. So I think that's huge. we, in prepping for this podcast, both Eric and I had read somewhere that you had talked about not all sports are created equal. And it sounds like a lot of this lesson comes from that is, in an individual sport, even though track does have a team element, you can't really hide. You have to put the work in to be able to be successful individually. I'd love for you, if that's accurate, or if you need to correct me, I'd love for you to kind of extrapolate that a little bit. Just talk about the difference in your mind between team sports and being an individual, and then maybe, tying back into being a good teammate. I would love to hear your thoughts around that.
Yeah, for sure. Well, the one thing, at least I wasn't blessed to be able to participate directly in is an organized like team sport. Because remember, I did get cut from the freshman basketball team. So all I do know is running around. It's oval. But the interesting thing, at least about track, is you do have that accountability to your team in terms of, to win against your opponent, everyone is putting in their own work in practice, on the track, in the weight room, on the field, to bring their best selves on that day, where they better have gotten the proper rest, they better have eaten appropriately, so that they can get the most points possible, so that the collective numbers come together where you win. And that's how, track teams just function in terms of how they compete against others. And for me, especially as captain my senior year, I tried to really lead by example and help inspire other members of my team, regardless of whether they were already candidates to being Ivy League champ or they were potentially the slowest guy on the team, around bring your best self day in, day out, and perform at the highest level you possibly can perform at, regardless if you potentially might be the fastest person on the track. Because one, you never know how your opponent's behaving. So you have to have fear and anxiety around just like what your current position is to begin with, in terms of being able to get the points to win the meet. And then two, that's just how you should just conduct your life in general, in my opinion, is just always optimize for the best performance you can as an individual. So that's how I actually, led as a captain, is that I was the first guy on the track, probably last guy out. I was working in the weight room hard as hell, and I was running the fastest times I ever did, even though I was running reasonably fast times at that point. And also I pushed others to do the same, and inspired many runners who at that time, coming into that year, were just okay to just feed off everyone's energy. And we had just an amazing vibe, an amazing just chemistry around just wanting to dominate our opponents. Even though we didn't win the Ivy League championship that year, the feeling of just everyone coming together and bringing their best self and laying it all on the line day in, day out was just electric. And I think in organized sports, it's very much similar as well. I think what's beautiful about how potentially on a football field or a soccer field, where you have to actually have even more chemistry together with one another, understand how people move, how they work, being able to actually in real time kind of talk in their ear and just kind of motivate each other. I think there's even more complexities around that brings more psychology to the game, and more understanding how to best leverage others that are in the heat of battle against your opponent, which you sometimes that does allow some folks to hide if there's some person that can really just like dominate the field and carry the weight. But also many times that person that you may have depended on in certain instances to carry the weight of the team, they can be having a bad day. So that means that you need to step up as a teammate to carry the weight as well, so that it ebbs and flows. I think the one thing about, again, individual sports is that it's all pure. It's all matters you, the gun, the track, and then the finish line and the clock. And whoever gets to the finish line first and clocks the fastest time wins, which I think is quite a little bit different. And kind of how I look about how that relates to even my role as a venture capitalist. There's a lot of similarities in terms of, we're a collective of partners, but individually we're going out there trying to source the best investments while still leveraging the partnership to find and win those deals. And then 2, we're serving on boards and we're serving as a lead point with those CEOs to help ultimately optimize for the best outcome, which in the case of analogy relative to winning a Super Bowl is finding a multi-billion-dollar exit that realizes material capital for our limited partners and for us as investors. And a lot of that goes into how much work am I personally putting into sourcing, networking with entrepreneurs, founders, creating my own theses around sectors I should be investing in, putting in the time, putting in the work to help all my portfolio companies be their best selves and bring the best they can to their own battlefields that they're on the front lines day in, day out, trying to, compete in the heat of battle. And there's a lot of learnings I've extracted from my track days that I've been able to bring to my venture capital days, because it's a very, very, very similar mentality and psychology.
That was, there were so many great lessons throughout that story. We could go many different directions, but one of the things that I keep hearing from you is definitely about, optimizing of taking this personal responsibility, the extreme ownership for really the results that you create in this effort. One of the things that I also am struck by is your strategy of surrounding yourself with other elite performers. I feel like you kind of get two viewpoints. There are unfortunately some that surround themselves with others that aren't as good as them, so that they can always kind of feel like they're the best in the room. What I'm hearing from you, and I'd love to hear how it bleeds over to what you guys are doing at Upfront as far as your employees and what portfolio companies you guys invest in, is what I'm taking away from you is the importance of actually having people that are, a little bit further ahead of you or maybe better than you at a specific aspect. Am I catching that right? Or what would you say of the people you choose to surround yourself with?
Yeah. My overall mentality of life is you are the company you keep. If you hang out with a bunch of bozos, then people look at you like a bozo. And if you surround yourself with elite performers, and elite performers, it doesn't necessarily have to mean they're the richest person in the world or they have the highest level of credentials or accomplishments in the athletic arena. There's elite professionals, there's elite people that are elite with regards to how they, parent in the home and take care of their kids, the way they are, spiritually grounded, the way they just operate in life. And it when you see someone that behaves and walks in that manner. And it when you see someone who's just a little bit rotten in some area of their life. And the way I've tried to at least conduct myself and carry myself is, I definitely try to act with the level of humility and selflessness, and at the same time push myself by surrounding myself with folks that can hold me accountable and push me to my highest level of execution in all facets of life. And in return, I'll do that for them, and we all grow together. And I think when you find a dynamic like that, whether it's, again, your personal life or your professional life with regards to the types of founders you choose to back and the level of success that they're chasing after and outcomes they're looking for, while at the same time they are grounded in how they actually create a culture and run a business that is not all about who makes the most money at the end of the day, but how they went about that journey and how they created that business that incredibly affected people's lives around the world. And for me, that's the type of founder I like to invest in. Those are the types of people I like to surround myself with, because at the end of the day, I feel like life is just all a function of relationships and people who you spend time with. And the more I can spend time with those types of people, the more I will both enjoy my life and also get the most value out of life.
Yeah, that's awesome. Great insights. And I think hopefully this isn't too far of a tangent, but just you talking about the passion and surrounding yourself with people that challenge you or really trying to make a difference. We'd love to dig in a little bit to Valence. Just what was the impetus behind that? What made you make the decision to throw operator back on your plate in addition to investor and board member? just kind of an open forum, but would love to hear the passion behind that and what led you down that path.
Yeah, well, I've had so much free time being a VC and a father of two and husband. But in all seriousness, it was the startup that I was never really trying to create, but I just saw firsthand there being this dynamic around, one, companies saying they want to hire more underrepresented talent, but struggle to find where they are, which many folks, when they hear that, will say, you're not trying hard enough. But my reaction is if someone actually articulates a problem, instead of smacking them over the head and saying, just do better, why don't I try to help them solve that? And then two, investors saying they want to back more Black founders, but they have no idea where to source them. And for me, I was like, wouldn't it be a pretty interesting idea if I could create a platform that created better transparency around the people within the Black professional community. And then I realized if I were to do that, like that's probably even more valuable for the community itself, because contrary to popular belief, not every Black person knows one another. But it'd be interesting, but what if we could? What if we could through a digital platform like this? And then I realized that if I were to create a digital platform like this, it can't just look sterile and boring. It has to have a brand soul. It has to look good. It has to feel good. It can't be just that cute Black professional networking platform over to the side there. I wanted to make it the best professional networking platform, period. But it happens to be initially focused on Black professionals. And there's an idea around there then be this narrative around using superheroes as a way to present some of the what I consider quiet superheroes that are walking amongst us in a manner so that they're celebrated and can inspire the next generation of talent to think about, maybe I can also be the next Robert Smith, or name your, successful Black professional of choice, and do that through a visual storytelling mechanism that could better connect with someone in their youth. So it was an idea I had, and I was hoping, honestly, as I came to the idea, that I would just tell it to people and they would just run with it and do it themselves, and I can just fund it because my job is to fund companies, not create them. But no, everyone was like, that's a great idea, you do it. It's a great idea, you do it. And then I started just creating this website as more of a passion project. And then as I was mentioning what the concept was to corporations, lots of folks were just like, wow, that's a great idea. Like, I would pay money to access this database. And I'm like, that's interesting. And then other fellow venture investor buddies were like, I want to fund this database. And I was like, wait a minute, I'm a VC. I can fund my own website if I want to. So then, honestly, just told my partners that Upfront this concept, and they were so incredibly supportive to the point where it's like, yeah, we should incubate this. We don't really incubate companies, but that's the kind of place Upfront is. We care about topics and creating incredible value and impact in this world above and beyond just, a buck for ourselves. And this falls in that area around how we could actually really move the needle in terms of just helping this community better find one another, access incredible executive opportunities, get on public boards, and also just get funded. And we were iterating on it for about a year, publicly launched it late last year, November, and just got an overwhelmingly positive response from so many people in and outside of the community. We have upwards of 7,000 people on the platform and growing with no real marketing against it. And we're just really now in a kind of a MVP phase of the platform that we feel could be a vehicle to drive material impact. And again, this was one where I just wanted to see these issues moved along, and I wanted to see something that could scalably solve the problem. And I know that could be done with technology. And I just realized if I could put my effort against this, that I can at least try to do my part in really bringing value to the world and do it in a way where, this is something that can, be so much bigger than me or anyone at Upfront. This could actually change a lot of people's lives. And who knows if it it will in practice, but we're trying, and I'm just trying to do my part and do it in a way where hopefully inspires others.
Wow, that's awesome. What an inspiring story. Congrats, obviously, on the success already. To have 7,000 people on the platform with such little marketing, it sounds like it's gaining great traction. And it actually reminds me of an interview you did at the Upfront Summit with John Legend and James Lowry. There was a comment that Jim made around it was referring to John Legend as far as having the talent and the platform, but then really trying to be that change maker and use that platform for a greater impact beyond himself. And that, I don't know, I get that relation to what you're doing there with Valence. And I guess if you had any advice for, our end listeners, a lot of them are professional athletes. They do have platforms and things they can do. It sounds like you took that bigger mindset and applied it here, even though maybe that's not what you sought out initially to do, but when it was presented, you took it. I'd love to hear just, when somebody has a platform and has that desire to go out and have a bigger impact, how do you handle that? What's maybe some advice for them?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it all depends on, I think it's the fact. I think anyone just needs to really follow their passion and be authentically themselves. It's so easy to realize you have a platform, you have access, and you should do something, but is it something that you are uniquely positioned to actually do and do well? And just being very, let's say, realistic with yourself around what to you is that passion and where can you truly be authentic and where can you truly excel and provide meaningful value. And I think once you really figure out what that is, I'd say just really lean into it into a way where it's just supernatural and something you obsess about and something where that passion and that emotion really bleeds through, where that authenticity bleeds through, because that's what truly inspires others when they actually hear that message, they hear whatever you're trying to push out there. People these days, they're smart. They'll realize if you're not really being having authentic mission or truly being yourself. But when they do see that, and when they do see that something is just like flowing from your soul and your bones, the right people will follow and congregate and really support you on that mission, and your platform can be used for good work. And I'd say surround yourself with people that are also on that similar mission with you, and potentially may even be more authentic, even better than you on that mission. Like, for instance, Jim Lowry, like he's been putting in this work for years. I never would have thought, rewind back over a year ago, that someone like Jim Lowry would even spend private time a day with me talking about this topic. But he saw the passion and just the tireless, selfless effort that I was trying to put against this overall category. And his quote was just like, "My life's work is now yours. Let's do this together." And that's like, I'm sitting here like, oh my God, that's a lot of pressure. But we're doing this together. It's the strengths I have that he doesn't have, and vice versa. But it's that combined effort, and it's that still unified vision we have, where the collective, 1 + 1 = 3 in this case. And we're just continuing to bring more and more powerful people along for that same mission. So it's just knowing where you have those gaps, knowing where to augment, where to complement, and then knowing where you can actually be a magnet for others to drive meaningful change collectively at scale. And that's kind of, I think, how at least I approached it. And again, I'm super early in this journey with regards to the Valence. Who knows where it goes? I'm just trying to do what feels natural to me. And all I know is that I never would have thought the types of folks that we're getting on board for this mission would be so excited to do it with me. But I think we just kind of have that shared passion and vision and authenticity around just trying to drive change. I think people need to find a similar underlying motivation themselves, authenticity, that can achieve similar outcomes, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that makes a tremendous amount of sense. And I'd love to almost stick for a second on that. If you could tap back into that conversation you had with Jim, he had made another comment that I thought would be really helpful for people listening is that, it's one thing to be a good mentor, but there's also, the aspect of being a good mentee. And I would love to hear, I would imagine you've mentored quite a few people, and it sounds like you've also been on the mentee side. So I would love to hear, what are some things that people could do to make sure that they're a good mentee. And, I'm sure it's just leaning it a little bit more to what you were just talking about.
Yeah. Well, first off, I chuckle when I get approached by folks and they dive in like, I want you to mentor me. It's like, no, like not how it works. You don't just go in like just saying like mentor me. It's like really good mentor-mentee relationships, which from my experience, just happen organically. They happen naturally, and then you wake up one day and you're like, wow, like I actually happen to be this person's mentor. I just before thought we were just friends. Now it's like, oh no, I've actually meaningfully given this person advice and have looked out for that person's career or looked out for that person's, personal life in a way where they look at me as their mentor. And in those instances, they probably have come with questions, focus, asked, and also have brought value themselves to the conversation. So it didn't feel like it's one-way street. It was very much a two-way dynamic going on. And I think the best mentor and mentee relationships I've been a part of are naturally or organic like that, where it doesn't feel like a clear hierarchy. And also there's mutual value transfer. I feel like some of the best quote unquote mentees I've had over my career have taught me a ton. And they've allowed me to grow because I feel like we all can learn so much from one another in life. I'd say that's at least retrospecting on how the best mentee-mentor relationships look like in practice, how they result at the end. But at the beginning, I'd say how you potentially approach it is just come with a very small, discrete, focused ask to begin with. And don't waste someone's time. Don't come in with something super heavy where the mentor potentially has to do so much work where it's like, oh my God, I don't know what to do with this. But take baby steps. And those baby steps, then if that initial focus ask was super easy to execute on the mentor side and the interaction itself was enjoyable for both, then this continual dialogue continues to happen. And it becomes a relationship. And it's how do you just develop a natural relationship in a way where it just doesn't feel contrived and it doesn't feel like a burden to anyone on either side. And that's at least the best relationships I've seen that if you were to look outside in, someone would call a mentor-mentee dynamic play out.
Thanks for sharing that. It's one of the things that continues to resonate as a consistent strand throughout a lot of your answers seems to be of like, not the focus of what can I get out of it, but what's the value add that I can bring or we as a company can bring to the portfolio companies, or just it's so much of, I think it's such a good mentality for us all to remember is to not be extractors, but to be adding value is where we can. And when that happens, beautiful relationship happens and we get these organic benefits that really are just the fruit of the relationship. And so really appreciate that insight. One kind of a pivot away from the business conversation, something that you have shared through multiple interviews is you have this, I think, a bigger view of what success means of optimizing. It's not just a financial number. It's nothing less than being very successful in the end result for your LPs and for yourself. But I've heard you talk about optimizing your health and something of being really, you'd said in a comment of you want to be a figurehead on multiple levels to your two sons. And so I know a lot of us personally here and just listening in are in the same boat. We're young fathers, we're young mothers that are still trying to have success at work or still in the, on the field. What advice would you share just what you're processing now of what it means to be a young father, a husband, and obviously a business leader as well?
Yeah, it's all very much a juggle. There's only so much time in the day. And also you need to have time for yourself or you will crumble. And for me, it's really a matter of prioritization and knowing when you're at home, be at home, be present and be the best father and husband you can be in that moment. And then knowing that you also have to battle obligations around what it means to be, a breadwinner and put food on the table and to create the best life possible for your family, and to do it in a way where it serves as an inspiring example with regards to how you did it, and that you, at least in my opinion, that you do it with the highest level of integrity and morals, where it causes you to be proud of the example you're setting for your kids. And for me, it's never lost to me the fact that everything I do, my two little boys, they're watching and they're probably emulating. So if I have good habits, I'm hoping they pick up those good habits. And if I have bad habits, they're probably going to pick up those bad habits. So the day we had our first son, I realized, this is, I'm not a kid anymore. That's when you grow up fast. And there was all these things I had to think about in my life around, what am I doing? How am I spending my time? What actions am I taking? What words come out of my mouth? And realizing that it's not about just me anymore. It's about these two boys that I hope to bring up as responsible, productive, just kind, citizens of this planet. And they'll go on and they'll do whatever, career that makes the most sense for them. But for me, it's just, how do I raise kind, amazing human beings? And I just need to create the best example that allows them to do that, and create the best environment that allows them to have the luxury to think about some of those things. But it's tough. Definitely, it's tough. And I think it's some of the things I do is I just take the appropriate time during the day to invest in myself. And what that means is, I have a rhythm of, I get up and first thing I do is I get in a really hard workout and beat the crap out of myself. And that's the investment I put in myself. And at the end of the day, I absolutely love cooking. And for me, cooking is therapeutic, but also it happens to put food on the table. So I can knock out two birds, one stone by helping feed the family and be able to cook. And that's a way of both being selfish and selfless as well at the same time. And that's kind of how I help kind of balance all these things.
Wow, it was helpful. I remember back to CES how fired up you were on the sous vide, and watching some of the other athletes, not even knowing what it is. My wife's a chef, culinary trained, and so I know the gift of the sous vide, and it's fun to see that passion.
Yeah, I can nerd out a bit, to say the least.
Yeah, and I love it. I think something you would just hit on there, right, is while going back to being the athlete and being disciplined and having this results focused is also the understanding of like the self-care. You have to stay healthy. And I think a lot of times we see this in the business world for a lot of us that have transitioned out of professional sports. It's like, we trained our whole life for a specific purpose, right? There was this, we're going to actually win, or for us, trying to be the best major league player in XYZ. You go through this transition, you're like, why am I under a squat rack? Like I've got no goal. But, I think now as what would you say to just maybe the business professional who keeps putting it off, that isn't paying attention to their health? What's kind of the advice that you would give there?
Oh, I mean, how I really thought about this is that, if you're not healthy, if you're not really investing in the long term, then what's going to matter if you're old in age and have all the money in the world, but you're not even there for your family because you're just in dire straits. And so for me, I really took a step back and realized, especially as I got into my mid 30s, is that the habits I formed at this point in life, especially having kids, are probably going to be the habits that I have for towards the end of my days. So I better create some pretty good habits, and many of those being oriented around my health. I need to be there so that I'm appropriately healthy for my family and for myself. And that's both physical and mental health. So unfortunately, I can do very little with the amount of weight I can squat and bench press these days, but I can tell you right now, I can strike fear into my two little boys for a while. So there's value in that. But for me, it's just being there and being strong. And also there's definitely a positive perception you will get in life if you walk around and if you are so blessed where you can work out to that level and you can keep in shape, because it is a blessing if you do have the physical ability to actually push your body to that level, that, don't squander that blessing, and hopefully inspires others to do the same. And so for me, it's just something that's super important to me in terms of how I live my life, is to be as healthy as possible, given whatever I'm able to do physically.
Yeah. Wow. Well, thank you for that. Just being sensitive to time, you have shared so many insightful and impactful things. And I think just kind of in summary, we appreciate just not only the time that you've shared here, but how you continue to just try and think about others. And whether it's through Valence or just even this conversation here of figuring out so much of how are you optimizing yourself really to be the best husband or father or leader. And so thank you so much for the time here. Any parting words for our professional athletes, investors, entrepreneurs that are listening in?
Parting words. I don't know if I have any parting words. I think I said a lot so far. I mean, I'm just very humbled that you guys are having me on this podcast to share a lot of, honestly, just the basic things that have been, governors in my life, and take whatever I've said here for what it's worth. I hope it's of value, and if it's not, everyone, we're all on this crazy walk of life, trying to figure it out and trying to find what works best for us. But I'm honestly just humbled that you guys are having me on here to just partake the knowledge that I have to share.
Well, thank you again. And for the Athlete CEO listeners, thank you guys for your attention. And until next time, stay humble, stay hungry, and exhaust the moment.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Athlete CEO Podcast, a production of AWM Capital. Please note that investments and strategies mentioned on this podcast may not be suitable for you. We encourage you to discuss your specific situation with a qualified, certified financial planner. All opinions expressed by podcast participants are solely their own opinions and do not reflect the opinion at AWM Capital or its affiliates. For more information, visit awmcap.com.